We are back on MorningLine. It's our final segment this morning. With us, Richard Tarpey, MTSU economics professor, talking about recession, the economy, what's happening right now in the world around us, trying to give you some ideas on what to expect one way or the other. One thing I think a lot of people can expect here in Tennessee, how big a deal do you think it is when we have these sales tax holidays? I mean, I think groceries today, it kicks in. Is that right, Rick? And so, I mean, that's money in people's pockets. It's not a ton, is it? It's
10%.
Yeah.
What, 9%?
Yeah, I know, but I mean, you did 9 people. Yeah, sure.
Doesn't hurt.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt. So things like that come along. What does that do, you think, for the consumer?
Well, I think it's mostly psychological.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
I'll save 10%. Depends how much I can possibly cram into 3 days of spending.
Yeah.
Or whatever the holiday is. You were going to buy that stuff anyway. Mm-hmm. So from a demand perspective, it just concentrates your demand into a shorter period of time because back to school.
Right, that's right. It's all tied in with this time.
Regardless of the holiday, I'm going to buy it. I have to. It's just going to cram it all in, and if I could save 10%, that's a deal. Mm-hmm. Right? Unfortunately, people are going to go spend that 10% on something else anyway.
Yeah.
It causes people, I think, to buy a little more than they were going to, which is not necessarily a great thing because you kind of stimulate demand that way, and that's the last thing we want right now is to stimulate demand. But I don't think it's enough to change anything because it's such a short period of time.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think you make a good point. It may cause you to spend a little bit more than you ordinarily would. So do you get the sense people are saving more right now, or are they spending more at this point in the game?
I think they're still spending more, but not as much as they were a couple months ago. Okay. We're on that downward trend. All right. And again, we look at some of the companies to show us this. Amazon, second quarterly loss. Mm-hmm. Never happened before since they came into existence. Yeah. That tells you people are going online less and spending less on that stuff that Amazon sells.
Does that mean then they're saving a little bit more because they're concerned, or they don't have the money to spend?
I think it's a little both. Yeah, people who have the money are a little more concerned. People that don't have the money can't spend it.
Okay.
Right? So I think we've seen that I think we've hit that peak, and we're starting to trend down a little bit of people saying, okay, wait a minute, I need to think about before I spend.
Yeah.
Walmart less volume, Target less volume, Amazon less volume. Those are all things that say we're spending less money. Peloton, people aren't buying the treadmills anymore.
Yeah.
Right. People are saving money. Of course, that was a whole pandemic blip anyway. The whole Peloton thing.
Yeah. Everyone wanted that again, which made sense at the time. Yeah. Let's go to Stuart. Stuart, good morning. Hi, Stuart.
Hey there.
Hey.
You mentioned the pipeline a moment ago. You talking about the Keystone?
Yes.
Okay. If I've got my facts correct, I kept up with all that when it was being talked about. That was going to go from Canada to New Orleans, and then it was going to be shipped out from there. So the U.S. was not going to get any of that oil. So please stop spreading the BS about the pipeline. That wasn't going. We were not going to get any of that. So I keep hearing that from the politicians about the pipeline. We weren't going to have any of that. Was it for gas? Either way. But I just had to call in and say that because I'm just tired of hearing about the pipeline. The pipeline, it wasn't going to affect us. So.
Okay. You want to comment a bit on that?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. It's a zero-sum game. So there's only so much oil in the supply. If we have more in the supply, so right now we're exporting the same. If we have more supply and we export all of our supply from the pipeline, that frees up other sources to refine into gasoline for the United States. So I agree with the caller as far as we were going to, I don't know, caller's done more research than me, as far as 100% of that oil was going to be exported. And that's fine. But that means other sources had to be freed up if all that oil is being exported.
Yeah. And there are people out there, because it was talked about so much, I think that pipeline is sitting there being not used.
Yeah.
And so he's right. It has been politicized to the, well, that pipeline's just sitting there. Why aren't we? It's not there. It wasn't built. Yeah. So, I mean, just get past it. It's over and done with. There was a reason for that. But, yeah, the point is, yeah, the huge global supply, that plays into it, and you could make that argument there.
The caller makes a very good point. The pipeline would not have solved our problems.
Right.
At all. Right. Our problems are much more widespread. We're looking at entire infrastructure of fossil fuels. So, again, capacity of refinery. Something that's a problem. It's gone down, but our our consumption's gone up, so that's a problem. That's a mismatch. We're not going to have enough supply. I think the general trend toward not approving new fossil fuel investment, just because we've decided, as our administration has decided, we're not doing that anymore. We're not ready for green energy. You can't just pull a switch. You have to transition. You can't just say, okay, let's just not do any more oil. Everybody do solar. Well, solar's not developed, right? We're not producing enough into our electricity grid to charge everybody's electric car right now. So I think the problem is we're being a little emotional making these big claims about we're not going to do this, we're going to do a big wind farm instead. Nobody's really thought out how do we transition with our infrastructure from one to the other. It has to be a thought-out process and not just an emotional, oh, we're not doing it anymore.
No, right? That doesn't work. So it takes time to bring this kind of change.
It's got to.
Yeah. It just is, you're not a financial counselor, I know that, but as we see the economy and interest rates and things change, I know that my financial advisor, who just basically helps me sometimes with my 401k and stuff like that, talks about, well, interest rates means we're going to look at some different investments for you. I don't know if more people, if you have 401ks, how you handle it, Roth IRAs. I know people that dip into their investment funds early, which I'm like, don't do that because you get penalties. Sometimes you have no choice. Yeah. But with the economy the way it's going, one thing I've done is just, you see it go up and down. Thank goodness I didn't invest in Bitcoin. But but I just ignore it still at this point. And I guess as I get closer someday to retirement, that's where I'll say, okay, I have to kind of move it around so it doesn't hit me because I'm going to take money out. But right now, I'm just riding it. And whatever we're seeing with a potential recession, interest rates, I mean, it's going to be cyclical and it's going to change over the next year or two. I mean, do you freak out much with your investments or whatever, your 401k?
No, I don't. You know, we went down a lot over the last 6 months, certainly. But it's come back.
Yep.
I think
and when it goes down is when you're buying up more and hopefully it comes back.
But you hit on the main point, which is you need to think about when you need the money.
Yeah.
If you don't need the money for another 10, 15 years, there's no point on getting all worked up over, let's say you have a lot of Apple stock and it went down quite a bit. You know it's going to come back to a certain point. So I think it's the individuals who actually try to fix everything that end up on the backside of the curve every time, right? They end up selling when it's low and buying when it's high because they're trying to manipulate it, trying to stay ahead of it. And I think we've proven you can't beat the stock market.
No.
Not on a day-to-day basis can you beat the stock market. We got a lot of very smart people trying, and they haven't done a great job of doing it.
Yeah, because the only way to beat it is to, before anything changes, sell. Before it drops. But if you wait till it drops, who knows that? Yeah. And then when? Then timing it and all that, that is an incredible...
It's a full-time job if you got that kind of time.
So as we wrap things up then, what do you suspect we're going to have a third quarter of negative growth?
I think it's going to be flat to negative.
Flat to negative.
I don't think it's going to be 6% growth in the third quarter. I don't see that possibly happening.
And you think jobs will shrink, unemployment will go up?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, and the question is how much, and that's the problem.
That's the problem.
Because there are going to be some people that are trying to go back to work, there'll be fewer jobs available, and then there'll be more competition for those jobs, which means then again, if you're desperate for a job, the employer can maybe be able to pay you a little less. Yeah. For you to take it. It's just crazy how all that works.
It is. I think the midterm elections are going to kind of influence somewhat. All right, so the politicians are going to do everything they can to either stimulate the economy, whatever the case may be, to avoid unemployment going up, because nobody wants to lose their office.
Right, right. And people don't. If people start losing their jobs, then that's where they blame it. Then when we come in, but is there that much politicians flat out can do in the short term to shift everything around, besides the interest rates and all that?
Not really. They could go give everybody another $1,000, but that's just
do you think they'll
mess everything up?
Yeah, now that was a pandemic thing. Do you think that's opened up the can of worms? I've had people message me before say, do you think if things happen with this recession, and I think they don't fully understand the recession where we're at right now, but they hear it, that we could get another stimulus check? And I'm like, I just don't see that happening.
I don't see it happening.
That was a very unique situation.
I think the only reason it won't happen is because we have such a close division of Congress. I think if we had one party in full control, I think there would be a possibility of doing that, because they continue to deny that that was any causal relationship to inflation. Yet, granted, you can't prove a one-to-one, this caused that, but we do know a lot of stimulus went out and we have very high inflation. Now granted, there were 8 other things besides that stimulus check that caused inflation. But it's been proven throughout economic history that when there's more money supply out there, people spend more, stimulates demand. We don't have the supply capabilities right now to meet that demand.
Yeah.
Supply chains are still not what they used to be. So if we stimulate demand now, inflation is just going to go up again.
Professor Tarpey, you are a good professor.
Well, thank you.
You know why? You make me understand this stuff. But I really do. This hour talking with you, and I appreciate the calls this morning. I know a lot of people listening. I just learn a lot about it, and I've got a much better understanding of this recession. It's not all doom and gloom, and the recession. There's reasons where we're at right now, and this is definitely, again, a unique situation. The way it is with employment, still people are working, people are still spending, so. Negative growth, well, we kind of saw that coming when they raised interest rates. Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you.
Maybe you'll come on again sometime soon, all right?
I hope to.
Appreciate you coming on. We'll take a break. I'll be back. Thank you. Programming note about tomorrow right after this. Stay with us.